As the sun sets behind the distant mountains, a weary traveler pulls up to the entrance of an old rundown hotel. The building looms ominously against the darkening sky, its windows boarded up and its paint peeling. Ignoring the sense of foreboding that tugs at their mind, the traveler steps out of the car, their footsteps echoing on the cracked pavement. Inside the hotel, the traveler is greeted by the receptionist, a gaunt, pale figure with hollow eyes and a forced smile. They hand over their ID and credit card, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in their stomach as the receptionist hands them a rusty key and points them towards the stairs. With a nervous glance around the lobby, the traveler heads off to find their room. As the traveler makes their way down the dimly lit hallway towards their room, they can't shake the feeling of being watched. The floorboards creak beneath their feet, and shadows dance along the walls, twisting and writhing as if alive. They quicken their pace, their heart pounding in their chest as they reach their destination. As the traveler settles into their room, they're startled by a sudden chill that fills the air. They turn to see a ghostly figure standing in the corner, a woman dressed in Victorian-era clothing, her eyes hollow and her expression mournful. The traveler's blood runs cold as they realize they're not alone in the room. As the night wears on, the hotel comes alive with paranormal activity. Doors slam shut on their own, lights flicker and dim, and strange noises echo through the hallways. The traveler huddles in their room, their heart racing as they listen to the unsettling sounds that fill the air. In the dead of night, the traveler is awoken by a sudden chill that fills the room. They sit up in bed, their eyes wide with fear as they realize they're not alone. Standing at the foot of the bed is the ghostly apparition from before, her eyes fixed on the traveler with an intensity that sends shivers down their spine. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the traveler makes a desperate bid for escape. They leap out of bed and race towards the door, their heart pounding in their chest as they flee down the haunted hallways. Behind them, they can hear the ghostly apparition's mournful wail, urging them to stay. As the traveler bursts out into the cool night air, they're greeted by the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. They pause for a moment, their breath coming in ragged gasps as they take in the beauty of the sunrise. With one last glance back at the haunted hotel, they turn and walk away, knowing they'll never forget the terror they experienced within its walls.
In a secluded forest, shrouded in mist and mystery, stood an old mansion, long abandoned and forgotten by time. Its towering facade loomed ominously over the surrounding trees, its windows dark and empty. Despite the warnings of locals, a group of friends decided to explore the mansion, drawn by the allure of its haunted reputation. The group consisted of 4 friends: Alex, Sarah, Mike, and Emily. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, they approached the mansion, their footsteps echoing in the silence of the forest. Alex, the leader of the group, was determined to uncover the mansion's secrets, while Sarah and Emily exchanged nervous glances, and Mike tried to mask his fear with bravado. Inside the mansion, the air was heavy with dust and decay. Cobwebs adorned the ceilings, and the floorboards creaked ominously underfoot. As they explored the dimly lit halls, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and strange whispers seemed to echo through the empty rooms. As they delved deeper into the mansion, the whispers grew louder, and the shadows seemed to twist and contort in the flickering light. Suddenly, they stumbled upon a room filled with strange artifacts and arcane symbols. A sense of dread washed over them as they realized they had stumbled upon something ancient and malevolent. Suddenly, a chilling wind swept through the room, extinguishing their flashlights and plunging them into darkness. Panic set in as they heard unearthly whispers and felt cold fingers brush against their skin. Frozen with fear, they realized they were not alone in the mansion. The shadows themselves were alive and hungry for their souls. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends fled from the mansion, their screams echoing through the halls. The shadows pursued them relentlessly, twisting and contorting in their wake. Bursting through the front door, they stumbled into the forest, gasping for breath as they prayed for escape from the nightmare. As they caught their breath, the friends knew they had escaped the mansion's clutches, but the memory of their terrifying ordeal would haunt them forever. As they made their way back to civilization, they vowed never to speak of their experience, lest the shadows find them once more and drag them back into the darkness. Emma, a young writer in her late 20s, inherits an old mansion called Everwood Manor from her estranged aunt. Hoping to find inspiration for her next novel, she moves into the house. As she steps inside, she feels an unsettling chill. The house, surrounded by tall, dark trees, looks like it hasn't been lived in for years. Dust covers the furniture, and the air is thick with the scent of old wood and mildew. She feels a strange sense of foreboding, but brushes it off as nerves. On her first night, Emma struggles to sleep. The house is filled with strange noises, the creaking of floorboards, the whisper of the wind through cracks in the windows, and distant, indistinct whispers. She hears what sounds like footsteps outside her bedroom door, but when she checks, no one is there. She returns to bed, uneasy and sleep-deprived. The next day, while exploring the house, Emma discovers a locked door in the basement. Curious, she searches the house and finds an old rusty key hidden in a drawer. She uses the key to unlock the door and finds a small room filled with old furniture, cobwebs, and a large, ornate mirror covered with a cloth. Emma removes the cloth from the mirror and, to her shock, sees the reflection of a young girl standing behind her. When she turns around, no one is there. The mirror begins to show disturbing images of past events in the house, including a girl being trapped and crying for help. Emma feels a chill run down her spine. Determined to find out more, Emma searches the house and finds an old diary hidden behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The diary belonged to her aunt and details a tragic story of a girl named Lily who lived in the house and mysteriously disappeared. Emma realizes the ghost she saw is Lily, trapped in the mirror. Emma decides to perform a seance to communicate with Lily's spirit. She sets up candles and chants words from the diary. The room grows cold, and Lily's ghost appears, revealing that she was trapped by a dark ritual performed by Emma's aunt. Lily begs Emma to free her. Following Lily's instructions, Emma gathers the items needed to break the ritual: a locket, a piece of Lily's clothing, and a special incantation. As she performs the ritual, the house shakes violently, and a dark, malevolent spirit tries to stop her. Emma persists, chanting the incantation louder and louder. The dark spirit attacks, but Emma continues the ritual, calling out to Lily for strength. A bright light fills the room, and the dark spirit screams before dissipating into nothingness. Lily's spirit smiles gratefully at Emma before ascending into the light, finally freed. With the haunting over, the house feels lighter and more welcoming. Emma finishes her novel, inspired by Lily's story. She decides to keep Everwood Manor and transform it into a place of peace and creativity. Sitting on the porch, she feels a deep connection to the house and its history, ready for a new beginning.
An old abandoned cabin stands alone in the heart of a dense forest. The wooden walls are rotting, and the windows are broken, giving the place a forlorn look. Tall, menacing trees surround the cabin, their long shadows stretching as the sun begins to set. Inside the cabin, the living room is a relic of the past, covered in dust and cobwebs. An old moth-eaten sofa sits in the center of the room, facing a fireplace with burnt logs. A single lantern flickers, casting eerie shadows on the walls, hinting at the secrets the cabin holds. The kitchen is in complete disrepair, with broken cabinets and rusted appliances. Moonlight filters through a cracked window, casting a pale glow on an old blood-stained knife lying on the counter. The air is thick with the scent of decay and forgotten memories. A narrow path winds through the dark forest, with twisted tree branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The ground is littered with fallen leaves, and an eerie mist rises from the forest floor, adding to the sense of unease that hangs in the air. In a clearing deep within the forest, the full moon illuminates an ancient stone altar. The altar is covered in moss and vines, and strange symbols are carved into the stone, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The air is thick with an otherworldly presence, making the skin crawl. A dark, fast-flowing river cuts through the forest, its black waters reflecting the moonlight. A rickety wooden bridge spans the river, creaking ominously with each gust of wind. The sound of the rushing water adds to the sense of isolation and dread. The basement of the cabin is dark and damp, with stone walls covered in moss. Rusted chains hang from the ceiling, swaying slightly in the draft. The floor is littered with broken bottles and old bones, remnants of a sinister past. A hidden room in the basement, revealed by a secret door, is filled with ancient books and strange artifacts. A large, dusty mirror dominates the room, reflecting an eerie glow. The air is thick with the scent of old parchment and something darker, more malevolent. As dawn breaks, the edge of the forest is bathed in a soft, golden light. The shadows recede, revealing the cabin in the distance. Birds begin to sing, their cheerful notes bringing a sense of normalcy back to the eerie setting, but the haunting memories of the night linger. In the morning light, the abandoned cabin appears less menacing, but still forlorn. The broken windows and overgrown yard are clearly visible, and a sense of unease still lingers in the air. The events of the night have left their mark, a reminder that some secrets are best left undisturbed. On a crisp autumn day, a group of friends arrives at a remote cabin nestled deep within the whispering woods. The leaves crunch beneath their feet as they unload their belongings from the car, eager for a weekend of hiking and relaxation. But as they glance into the dense forest surrounding the cabin, a sense of unease washes over them, as if the trees themselves are whispering secrets they dare not share. The friends set out on a hike through the whispering woods, following a narrow trail that winds through the dense foliage. The air is cool and fragrant, and the only sound is the gentle rustle of leaves overhead. But as they venture deeper into the forest, the whispers grow louder, like a chorus of voices urging them to turn back. As they hike, the friends stumble upon an abandoned cabin hidden deep in the woods. The windows are shattered, and the door hangs off its hinges. Intrigued, they decide to investigate, their curiosity outweighing their sense of caution. But as they step inside, they're greeted by an eerie silence that hangs heavy in the air. Inside the cabin, the friends find strange symbols scrawled on the walls and mysterious artifacts scattered about. A sense of unease washes over them as they realize they've stumbled upon something dark and sinister. They exchange nervous whispers, their voices echoing in the empty space. As night falls, the friends gather around a campfire outside the cabin, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. But as they talk and laugh, they become aware of a strange sound, a soft whispering that seems to emanate from the very air around them. Their laughter fades, replaced by a growing sense of unease. That night, the friends are plagued by haunting dreams, visions of shadowy figures lurking in the darkness, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. They toss and turn in their sleep, unable to escape the grip of fear that holds them tight. When they wake, they find themselves drenched in sweat, their hearts pounding in their chests. As the whispers grow louder and more insistent, the friends begin to unravel, their minds tormented by the malevolent voices that seem to follow them wherever they go. They argue and accuse one another, their once strong bonds fraying under the weight of paranoia and fear. But as they spiral further into madness, they realize they must confront the darkness that lurks within the whispering woods if they have any hope of escaping its grasp. Armed with determination, the friends set out into the forest, their hearts pounding in their chests as they confront the source of the whispers that have tormented them for so long. With each step, the voices grow louder, until they're surrounded by a cacophony of sound that threatens to drive them mad. But as they reach the heart of the woods, they discover the truth. The whispers are not coming from some malevolent force, but from the very trees themselves, their branches swaying in the breeze like fingers beckoning them closer. With a newfound sense of understanding, the friends make their way out of the forest, their minds clearer than they've been in days. As they emerge into the light of day, they feel a weight lifted from their shoulders, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the whispering woods will always hold a certain mystique, they know they'll never again be haunted by the whispers that once tormented them.
Michael, a man in his late 30s, receives a surprising letter. His great-uncle, whom he barely knew, has passed away, leaving him an old manor in the remote countryside. Intrigued and financially struggling, Michael decides to visit the manor with his wife, Sarah, and their teenage daughter, Emily. Michael reads the letter aloud. It says we have inherited an estate. Sarah looks at him skeptically. Are you sure this is a good idea? Michael nods. We could use a fresh start. Besides, what harm could it do? Emily, always up for an adventure, adds, It sounds exciting. Let's go. The family arrives at the manor in the late afternoon. The mansion is grand but clearly neglected, surrounded by overgrown gardens and tall, dense trees. The sky is overcast, casting a gloomy shadow over the scene. Emily shivers. This place gives me the creeps. Michael tries to be optimistic. It's just old. We can fix it up. Sarah clutches Emily's hand. Let's stay close and see what's inside. Inside, the manor is filled with dust, cobwebs, and a musty smell. The furniture is covered with white sheets. As they explore, Emily finds an old, ornate mirror in one of the rooms. Unlike the rest of the house, the mirror's surface is strangely clean. Look at this mirror, Emily calls out. Sarah touches the frame. It's beautiful, but it feels out of place. Michael frowns. Why is it so clean? That night, the family tries to settle in. Michael and Sarah fall asleep quickly, but Emily struggles. Around midnight, she hears faint whispers and feels a cold breeze. The mirror in her room begins to fog up, revealing words written from the inside. Help us, it reads. Terrified, Emily runs to her parents' room. Mom, Dad, there's something in the mirror. Michael, groggy, tries to comfort her. It's just your imagination, Emily. Go back to sleep. The next day, the family visits the local library to learn more about the manor. They discover that it was owned by Michael's great-uncle, a reclusive man with a dark interest in the occult. Sarah reads from an old newspaper. Local recluse found dead under mysterious circumstances. Manor believed to be haunted. Michael sighs. This explains a lot. We need to be careful. Emily, still shaken, adds, what if the spirits are still here? Back at the manor, Michael discovers a hidden door in the basement. Inside, they find an old study filled with books on the occult, strange artifacts, and a large locked chest. Sarah examines a book. He was into dark stuff. This can't be good. Michael tries to open the chest, but fails. We need to find the key. There might be answers inside. Emily points to a strange symbol on the wall. I've seen this symbol before, in my room. That night, the hauntings escalate. Objects move on their own, and ghostly apparitions appear. Emily is dragged out of bed by an unseen force, and Sarah sees a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway, watching them. We have to leave now, Sarah screams, but the doors are locked and won't open. Michael grabs an old book from the study. This book has instructions to banish the spirits. We need to perform the ritual. Desperate, the family gathers in the basement to perform the ritual. They light candles and arrange the symbols in a circle. Michael reads the incantation aloud, while Sarah and Emily hold hands, trembling. As the ritual progresses, the house shakes, and the spirits grow more agitated. A blinding light fills the room, and the spirits are drawn into the circle, screaming. Keep going, Michael! Sarah yells over the noise. With a final shout, Michael completes the incantation, and the spirits vanish. The house falls silent. The next morning, the manor feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone, and sunlight streams through the windows. The family packs up their belongings, relieved that the ordeal is over. We should tell someone about this place, Sarah says, looking back at the manor. Michael nods. Let's make sure no one else has to go through this. They drive away, leaving the manor behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Emily finds the old mirror in her room, even though they left it at the manor. Her heart races as she sees words slowly appear on the surface. We are not done, it reads. Emily turns to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness.
On a chilly autumn night, 4 friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lisa, stood at the gate of Ravenswood Manor. The old house was rumored to be haunted, but they were determined to spend the night inside to prove their bravery. They pushed open the creaky front door and stepped into the foyer. The air was musty, and the only light came from their flashlights. Dust-covered furniture and cobwebs filled the room, adding to the eerie atmosphere. They moved into the living room, where a grand piano stood in one corner, and an old tattered sofa sat under a large broken window. Suddenly, the piano played a single, eerie note, making everyone jump. They cautiously climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was long and dark, with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver and they heard faint, eerie whispers. They opened one door and found an old nursery. Dusty toys were scattered around, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. Panicking, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even darker and colder. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, and old furniture was strewn around. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. Her hollow eyes stared at them as she whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Ravenswood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed never to speak of it again. The sun was setting as Emily, a young journalist, arrived at Ravenswood Manor. She had heard rumors of the haunted mansion and wanted to investigate for her next big story. The old, decaying building stood at the edge of the town, surrounded by overgrown trees. As she approached the iron gates, a sense of dread washed over her. Emily pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and cold. Dust covered the floor and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but neglected interior. Her footsteps echoed ominously as she walked down the main hallway. In the dim light, Emily noticed portraits lining the walls. The eyes in the paintings seemed to follow her every move, making her uneasy. Suddenly, she heard a faint whisper, like someone calling her name. She turned around quickly, but there was no one there. Her heart began to race. Emily entered the music room, where an old piano stood covered in dust. As she approached, she heard a soft, haunting melody. The keys were moving on their own, playing a melancholic tune. The room grew colder, and Emily felt an unseen presence watching her. In the library, Emily found a hidden door behind a bookcase. Inside, she discovered a small room filled with strange artifacts and an old leather-bound journal. She opened the journal and read about dark rituals and a curse placed on the mansion. The final entry warned of a vengeful spirit trapped within the house. As Emily read the journal, the temperature dropped sharply. She heard footsteps approaching and saw a shadowy figure materialize in the doorway. The figure was a ghostly woman with a twisted expression of rage. She pointed at Emily, her voice echoing with anger. "You must leave this place!" Emily's survival instincts kicked in, and she bolted from the hidden room. She raced through the dark hallways, the spirit's angry screams echoing behind her. She reached the front door and flung it open, escaping into the night. Gasping for breath, she looked back to see the mansion standing silent and still, but she knew she had been lucky to escape with her life. Safe at home, Emily reviewed her notes and the footage she had captured. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the mansion's dark history and the vengeful spirit. As she finished, she felt a cold breeze and heard a whisper, "Thank you." She knew the spirits had found some peace. In a quiet, small town nestled among rolling hills, the last rays of the setting sun paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. Cozy houses line the streets, their windows glowing warmly against the encroaching darkness. But beneath the tranquil facade, whispers of something sinister linger in the air. On the outskirts of town stands an old, abandoned house, its once grand facade now crumbling and decayed. Windows are boarded up, and the yard is overrun with weeds that seem to reach out like grasping fingers. Moonlight bathes the scene in an otherworldly glow, casting long, ominous shadows that seem to pulse with a life of their own. Inside the abandoned house, the living room is frozen in time, its once grandeur now a distant memory. Dusty furniture sits silent and still, draped in cobwebs that hang like gossamer threads from the ceiling. Moonlight filters weakly through cracks in the boarded-up windows, casting eerie patterns that dance upon the worn floorboards. Beyond the abandoned house stretches a dense forest, its twisted trees looming like silent sentinels in the darkness. Long, twisted shadows dance upon the forest floor, moving with an otherworldly grace. The air is thick with the sound of rustling leaves and the distant whispers that seem to echo through the trees, sending shivers down the spine of any who dare to venture within. In the kitchen of the abandoned house, decay holds sway, with peeling wallpaper and rusty appliances bearing witness to the passage of time. Moonlight filters weakly through grimy windows, casting eerie shadows that seem to writhe and twist upon the cracked linoleum floor, as if alive with some unseen presence. In the heart of the forest lies an ancient cemetery, its weathered headstones standing sentinel over the graves of generations long gone. Moonlight bathes the scene in an ethereal glow, casting shadows that seem to dance among the graves, whispering secrets of the past to any who will listen. Within the abandoned house, a desolate bedroom lies silent and still, its once cozy atmosphere now replaced by an oppressive sense of emptiness. A rotting bed frame stands as a silent sentinel against the decaying walls, while tattered curtains flutter in the breeze. Moonlight filters weakly through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows that seem to linger like phantoms in the night. A decrepit bridge spans a gaping chasm, its rusted metal groaning and creaking in the wind. Moonlight reflects off the murky waters below, casting eerie reflections on the moss-covered stones that line the riverbank. The air is heavy with the scent of decay, and a sense of foreboding hangs thick in the air. Deep within the bowels of the abandoned house lies the basement, a dark and musty chamber filled with cobwebs and decay. Moonlight filters weakly through a small barred window, casting eerie shadows that seem to dance upon the damp concrete floor like specters in the night. As dawn breaks, the town square is bathed in the soft light of a new day, casting long shadows that retreat before the encroaching sunlight. The darkness gives way to the promise of a new beginning, but the whispers of the shadows linger, a reminder of the horrors that lurk within the depths of the night.
As dusk settles over the sleepy town, a car pulls up to the edge of Willow Lake, its waters shrouded in mist. Inside are four friends, Emma, Jake, Lily, and Max, seeking a weekend getaway at a lakeside cabin. The air is cool and still, and the only sound is the gentle lapping of water against the shore. The friends arrive at the lakeside cabin, a rustic wooden structure perched on the edge of the water. The moonlight reflects off the lake's surface, casting a shimmering path to the cabin's door. Excitement fills the air as they unload their belongings, eager to relax and unwind in the secluded setting. As night falls, the friends gather around a crackling fire outside the cabin, sharing stories and laughter. But as the hour grows late, a chill wind sweeps in from the lake, and a sense of unease settles over the group. Shadows dance among the trees, and the distant sound of a loon's call sends shivers down their spines. Suddenly, a thick fog rolls in from the lake, engulfing the cabin in a blanket of white. Visibility drops to almost nothing, and the friends find themselves disoriented and afraid. Strange shapes loom in the mist, and the sound of footsteps echoes through the fog. As the fog thickens, the friends begin to hear faint whispers that seem to emanate from the darkness itself. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an eerie chorus. The friends exchange nervous glances, their hearts pounding in their chests as they try to make sense of the haunting sounds. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize in the fog, a spectral procession of ethereal beings with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. Their ghostly forms glide through the mist, their movements graceful yet haunting. The friends watch in horror as the spirits draw closer, their presence filling the night with dread. With a collective cry, the friends turn and flee from the cabin, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the thick fog, branches clawing at their skin and roots tripping them up. Behind them, the ghostly spirits follow, their wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the fog, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the shore of Willow Lake, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. As the first light of dawn breaks through the mist, they share a solemn vow never to return to the haunted cabin by the lake. Sophie arrived at Briarwood Manor, a sprawling estate she inherited from her great-uncle. The mansion stood alone on a hill, surrounded by gnarled trees and thick fog. As she approached, the gate creaked open on its own, setting her nerves on edge. She hesitated but walked through, determined to uncover the secrets of her inheritance. Sophie stepped inside the manor, greeted by a grand but dusty foyer. The air was heavy with the scent of decay. As she moved further in, the front door slammed shut behind her with a loud bang. Startled, she spun around, but no one was there. The only light came from her flickering flashlight. In the living room, old furniture was covered in white sheets. An antique clock ticked loudly, breaking the silence. Sophie noticed a photograph on the mantelpiece, showing her great-uncle with an unknown woman. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned quickly, but the room was empty. Sophie walked down a hallway lined with portraits of her ancestors. Their eyes seemed to follow her every move. She felt a chill as she passed by a particularly stern-looking man. As she continued, she heard a whisper, almost as if someone was calling her name. She froze, heart pounding. In the library, Sophie found shelves filled with dusty old books. One book in particular caught her eye, an old journal. As she read through it, she discovered it belonged to her great-uncle, detailing strange events and encounters with a dark presence. The room grew colder, and she felt like she was being watched. Behind a bookshelf, Sophie discovered a hidden door. She hesitated but felt compelled to open it. The door revealed a dark, narrow staircase leading down. Holding her flashlight, she descended, each step echoing in the silence. The air grew damp and cold. The basement was filled with old furniture and strange symbols painted on the walls. In the center stood an altar with black candles and an old book. As Sophie approached, the candles flickered to life, casting an eerie glow. She felt an overwhelming sense of dread as she heard distant whispers. Sophie's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand on her shoulder. She spun around to see a ghostly figure of the unknown woman from the photograph, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Help me," the figure whispered. Terrified, Sophie ran up the stairs, the house seeming to come alive with shadows moving and doors slamming. She burst through the front door into the foggy night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop running until she reached her car. She looked back once more, vowing never to return. Breathing heavily, Sophie glanced back at the manor as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure of the unknown woman watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, never looking back.
In the heart of the small town of Ravenswood, a young historian named Emily discovered an ancient, dusty manuscript in the basement of the local library. The manuscript, bound in dark leather, was covered in strange symbols and appeared to be centuries old. Emily's curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to take it home for further study. As she left the library, the old librarian, Mr. Finch, watched her with a worried expression. "Be careful with that book," he warned. "It's said to be cursed." Emily shrugged off his concerns. "It's just an old book. What harm could it do?" At home, Emily began to translate the manuscript. It told the story of a powerful sorcerer who had cursed the book to trap the souls of those who read it. As she read, strange things started happening. The room grew colder, and shadows seemed to move on their own. Emily's cat, Luna, hissed and arched her back, staring at an invisible presence. Ignoring the signs, Emily continued to read, her fascination growing. "I have to know more," she muttered to herself, her eyes glued to the ancient text. Late that night, Emily was awakened by a cold breeze and the feeling of being watched. She looked around her dark bedroom and saw a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. It had hollow eyes and a twisted smile. "Who are you?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond but began to move closer, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. Emily scrambled out of bed and turned on the light, but the figure vanished. Panting, she realized the curse was real. She needed help. The next day, Emily visited her friend Alex, who was an expert in the occult. She told him everything about the manuscript and the shadowy figure. "This is serious," Alex said, flipping through the manuscript. "You need to destroy this book before it's too late." Emily hesitated. "But it's an incredible find. There must be another way." Alex shook his head. "The longer you keep it, the stronger the curse will become. You don't understand the danger you're in." Emily reluctantly agreed. They decided to perform a ritual that night to break the curse. As night fell, Emily and Alex gathered the necessary items for the ritual: candles, salt, and an ancient incantation. They returned to Emily's house and set up in her study, drawing a protective circle on the floor. "Are you sure this will work?" Emily asked, placing the candles around the circle. It has to, Alex replied, lighting the candles. We don't have any other choice. Emily's hands trembled as she held the manuscript. Let's do this. As they began the ritual, the temperature in the room plummeted. The shadowy figure reappeared, more menacing than before. It howled and thrashed against the barrier of the protective circle. Keep chanting, Alex yelled over the noise. Emily's voice wavered as she recited the incantation, but she kept going. The figure's form started to waver, and it let out a piercing scream. With one final burst of energy, it shattered into 1,000 pieces of darkness, vanishing completely. Panting, Emily and Alex looked at each other. Is it over? Emily asked. I think so, Alex replied, his voice shaking. The room was eerily quiet after the spirit vanished. Emily knew what she had to do next. She took the manuscript and, with a heavy heart, threw it into the fireplace. The flames roared to life, consuming the ancient book. As the manuscript burned, Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The curse was finally broken. Thank you, Alex, she said, watching the flames. We did it together, Alex replied. Let's hope we never encounter anything like this again. In the days that followed, Emily's life returned to normal. The eerie occurrences stopped, and she was able to focus on her work again. She vowed to be more cautious with the ancient texts she studied. One evening, she and Alex met at a cafe to catch up. How are you holding up? Alex asked. Better, Emily said with a smile. I think I've had enough excitement for a lifetime. They laughed, but a part of Emily still wondered about the other secrets the world held. For now, though, she was content to leave them undiscovered. As Emily walked home from the cafe, she felt a chill in the air. She glanced around, suddenly uneasy. When she arrived at her apartment, she found a package waiting at her door. Curious, she opened it and gasped. Inside was another ancient manuscript, even older than the one she had destroyed. Attached was a note, for your collection. Emily's heart raced. She looked around, but there was no one in sight. She knew this was far from over. Emily sat at her desk, staring at the new manuscript. She knew she should destroy it, but her curiosity was overwhelming. She reached out and opened the book, unable to resist. As she began to read, the room grew colder once again. Shadows crept along the walls, and a familiar sense of dread filled the air. The curse had returned, and this time, it was more powerful than ever. Emily was trapped in an endless cycle, forever bound to the cursed manuscripts. The haunting of Ravenswood was far from over. It was a cold, rainy evening when Emily received a letter from a law firm she had never heard of. Her great-uncle, a man she had never met, had passed away and left her his mansion, Blackwood Manor. Intrigued by the unexpected inheritance, Emily decided to visit the old house with her friends, Mark, Sophie, and Daniel. I can't believe this place is mine, Emily said as they drove up the winding road to the mansion. Blackwood Manor loomed ahead, a Gothic structure with ivy-covered walls and dark, empty windows that seemed to watch their every move. Looks like something out of a horror movie, Daniel joked, though his eyes reflected a hint of fear. Inside, the mansion was even more imposing. High ceilings, dusty furniture, and cobwebs in every corner gave it an eerie atmosphere. They split up to explore, each drawn to different parts of the house. Look at this place, Sophie said, her voice echoing in the grand foyer. It's like stepping back in time. Emily found herself in the library, where she discovered old family portraits in a large leather-bound book on a pedestal. As she opened it, a chill ran down her spine. The book contained detailed accounts of strange rituals and ghostly sightings. This is weird, she murmured, feeling an inexplicable sense of dread. That night, the friends settled into their rooms. The wind howled outside, and the mansion creaked with every gust. Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As she tried to sleep, she heard whispers and footsteps in the hallway. Who's there? She called out, but received no answer. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the foot of her bed. Emily screamed, waking everyone up. When they rushed into her room, the figure was gone. It was right there, Emily insisted, trembling. It was just a bad dream, Mark said, trying to comfort her, but his voice lacked conviction. The next day, they decided to explore the basement, hoping to uncover the source of the strange occurrences. The basement was dark and musty, filled with old furniture and boxes. In the far corner, they found a hidden door. "This place just gets creepier," Daniel said as they pried the door open. Inside was a small room filled with bizarre artifacts, jars with strange contents, ancient symbols carved into the walls, and a large, dusty mirror. "What the hell is all this?" Sophie asked, her voice shaking. "It looks like some kind of ritual room," Emily said, her unease growing. "It looks—" Emily felt drawn to the mirror. As she wiped away the dust, she saw not just her reflection, but another face behind her. An old woman with hollow eyes and a sinister smile. "Emily, step away from the mirror," Mark said, pulling her back. The reflection changed, showing horrific scenes of past inhabitants suffering. The room grew colder and the sense of dread intensified. "We need to get out of here," Daniel said urgently. But the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. The symbols on the walls began to glow, and the ghostly face in the mirror started to chant. Trapped in the basement, the friends tried to find a way out. The ghostly presence grew stronger, manifesting in front of them. The old woman from the mirror appeared, her eyes filled with malice. "You shouldn't have come here," she hissed. "This house is cursed." Objects began to fly around the room, and the friends huddled together, trying to protect themselves. Emily remembered the book she found in the library. "We need to perform a ritual to banish her," she shouted over the chaos. Emily and the others rushed back to the library to retrieve the book. As they read through the incantations, the mansion seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and windows shattering. "Hurry, Emily," Sophie urged. Emily recited the ritual, and the ghostly figure screamed in rage. The house shook violently, and the friends struggled to keep their balance. "By the power of light, we banish you," Emily shouted. A blinding light filled the room, and the ghost's scream reached a deafening pitch before she vanished, leaving the house silent once more. The mansion was eerily quiet after the ghost was banished. The friends cautiously explored, ensuring the spirit was truly gone. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, and the house seemed almost peaceful. "We did it," Daniel said, relieved. "But what now?" Sophie asked. "This place still feels wrong." "We should leave," Emily decided. "This house needs to be left alone." They packed their things and left Blackwood Manor, vowing to never return. As they drove away, Emily glanced back one last time. The mansion stood silently, its dark history buried once more. Back in their town, life slowly returned to normal. The friends tried to move on, but the memories of Blackwood Manor lingered. Emily kept the book hidden away, a reminder of the horrors they faced. One night, Emily heard a familiar whispering. She turned to see the old woman from the mirror standing at the foot of her bed. "Did you really think it was over?" the ghost whispered, her voice dripping with malice. Emily screamed, and the room went dark. The nightmare was far from over.
Jonathan, a middle-aged man with a strained relationship with his family, receives a letter informing him of an inheritance from his late uncle. The inheritance includes a remote mansion in the countryside. Curious and financially strained, Jonathan decides to visit the mansion with his wife, Laura, and their teenage daughter, Megan. Laura looks worried. "Are you sure about this? We don't even know much about your uncle." Jonathan nods. "We need a fresh start, and maybe this place can offer that." Megan, always the adventurous one, says excitedly, "It'll be like an adventure." The family arrives at the mansion late in the afternoon. The mansion stands tall and imposing, surrounded by a dense forest. The air is thick with the scent of decay, and the atmosphere is eerily quiet. Megan shivers. This place feels off. Jonathan, trying to be positive, says, "It's just old. Let's see what's inside." Laura clutches Megan's hand. "Stay close, honey." Inside, the mansion is filled with dust and cobwebs. The furniture is covered with white sheets, and the air is musty. As they explore, Megan finds an old, ornate mirror in one of the rooms. The mirror's surface is strangely clean compared to the rest of the house. "Look at this mirror," Megan calls out. Laura touches the frame. "It's beautiful, but out of place here." Jonathan frowns. "Why is it so clean?" That night, The family tries to settle in. Jonathan and Laura fall asleep quickly, but Megan struggles. Around midnight, she hears faint whispers and feels a cold breeze. The mirror in her room begins to fog up, revealing words written from the inside. "Help us," it reads. Terrified, Megan runs to her parents' room. "Mom, Dad, there's something in the mirror." Jonathan, groggy, tries to comfort her. "It's just your imagination, Megan. Go back to sleep." The next day, the family visits the local library to learn more about the mansion. They discover that it was owned by Jonathan's uncle, who was a reclusive and eccentric man interested in the occult. Laura reads from an old newspaper. Local recluse found dead under mysterious circumstances. Mansion believed to be haunted. Jonathan sighs. "This explains a lot. We need to be careful." Megan, still shaken, adds, "What if the spirits are still here?" Back at the mansion, Jonathan discovers a hidden door in the basement. Inside, they find an old study filled with books on the occult, strange artifacts, and a large locked chest. Laura examines a book. "He was really into dark stuff. This can't be good." Jonathan tries to open the chest, but fails. "We need to find the key. There might be answers inside." Megan points to a strange symbol on the wall. "I've seen this symbol before, in my room." That night, the hauntings escalate. Objects move on their own, and ghostly apparitions appear. Megan is dragged out of bed by an unseen force, and Laura sees a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway watching them. "We have to leave now," Laura screams, but the doors are locked and won't open. Jonathan grabs an old book from the study. "This book has instructions to banish the spirits. We need to perform the ritual." Desperate, the family gathers in the basement to perform the ritual. They light candles and arrange the symbols in a circle. Jonathan reads the incantation aloud, while Laura and Megan hold hands, trembling. As the ritual progresses, the house shakes, and the spirits grow more agitated. A blinding light fills the room, and the spirits are drawn into the circle, screaming. "Keep going, Jonathan!" Laura yells over the noise. With a final shout, Jonathan completes the incantation and the spirits vanish. The house falls silent. The next morning, the mansion feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone, and sunlight streams through the windows. The family packs up their belongings, relieved that the ordeal is over. "We should tell someone about this place," Laura says, looking back at the mansion. Jonathan nods. "Let's make sure no one else has to go through this." They drive away, leaving the mansion behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Megan finds the old mirror in her room, even though they left it at the mansion. Her heart races as she sees words slowly appear on the surface. "We are not done," it reads. Megan turns to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness. Clara arrived at Ashwood House, an eerie, dilapidated mansion she had inherited from her aunt. The mansion stood on a hill, surrounded by dense, dark woods. The air was thick with fog, and the only sound was the distant hooting of an owl. As Clara walked up the creaky wooden steps, the front door slowly swung open on its own. Clara stepped inside, her footsteps echoing in the vast, empty hallway. Dust covered the floors, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. The walls were lined with faded portraits of stern-faced ancestors. She felt a sudden chill as she closed the door behind her, the silence inside the mansion almost deafening. Clara moved into the living room, where old, tattered furniture was draped in white sheets. An antique piano sat in one corner, its keys yellowed with age. As she walked past, she heard a single note play, sending shivers down her spine. She turned quickly, but no one was there. In the dining room, Clara found a large portrait of her Aunt Margaret above the fireplace. The eyes in the portrait seemed to follow her every move. As she stared at the painting, she heard faint whispering, as if someone was trying to communicate with her. She felt a cold breeze brush past her. In the library, Clara discovered an old, leather-bound diary hidden behind a row of books. The diary belonged to her aunt and detailed strange occurrences and eerie experiences in the house. As she read, the room grew colder, and she felt as if someone was watching her. Behind a bookshelf, Clara found a hidden door leading to a narrow, spiral staircase. She hesitated, but felt compelled to explore. Holding her flashlight, she descended the stairs, each step echoing in the darkness. The air grew colder and more oppressive with every step. The basement was damp and filled with old, dusty furniture covered in sheets. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls. In the center of the room stood an old wooden table with a black candle, which suddenly lit itself. Clara felt a sense of dread as she approached the table. Clara's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand on her shoulder. She spun around to see a ghostly figure of her Aunt Margaret, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Leave this place," the ghostly figure whispered. Panic-stricken, Clara ran up the stairs, the house seeming to come alive with doors slamming and shadows moving. She burst through the front door into the night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop running until she reached her car, vowing never to return to Ashwood House. Breathing heavily, Clara glanced back at the mansion as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure of her Aunt Margaret watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, never looking back. In a small town nestled among dense forests stood an old manor, its windows boarded up and its once grand facade now crumbling. The townsfolk whispered tales of the mansion being haunted, with eerie lights seen flickering in the windows at night. A group of adventurous teenagers led by Alex decided to spend the night in the abandoned manor, hoping to debunk the supernatural rumors surrounding it. They arrived just as dusk settled, their excitement tinged with nervousness. As they ventured inside, the air grew colder and the silence thicker. The floorboards creaked beneath their feet as they explored the dimly lit rooms, each filled with dusty furniture covered in white sheets. Strange occurrences began to unfold. Doors slammed shut on their own, whispers echoed through the halls, and ghostly apparitions appeared fleetingly in the corners of their eyes. Alex remained determined to find a rational explanation, but doubt crept into their minds. As midnight approached, the supernatural presence in the manor grew stronger. The teenagers found themselves surrounded by swirling mists and ominous whispers, trapped in a nightmarish labyrinth where reality blurred with the paranormal. With their courage waning, the teenagers made a desperate attempt to escape the malevolent forces that held them captive. Racing through the maze-like corridors, they stumbled upon a hidden passage leading to freedom. As dawn broke, the teenagers emerged from the manor, shaken but alive. They vowed never to return to the cursed place, their encounter with the supernatural etched into their memories forever.
Ravenwood Manor, a looming Gothic structure, dominates the landscape with its ominous presence. The setting sun bathes its darkened facade in a blood-red glow, as if warning all who dare approach of the secrets it holds within. The entrance to Ravenwood Manor is marked by ornate iron gates, their twisted designs speaking of a forgotten era. Vines snake their way around the cold metal, as if nature itself is reclaiming the estate from the hands of man. Within the sprawling grounds of Ravenwood Manor, darkness reigns supreme. Overgrown hedges and wilted flowers lend an air of neglect to the once grand estate. Moonlight struggles to penetrate the thick canopy of trees, casting eerie shadows upon the unkempt landscape. In the backyard of Ravenwood Manor, twisted paths wind their way through a maze of gnarled trees. At the center stands an ancient well, its stone walls covered in moss and mystery, beckoning those brave enough to uncover its secrets. Adjacent to Ravenwood Manor lies an overgrown cemetery, its weathered tombstones peeking through the tangled undergrowth like silent sentinels of the past. Wisps of fog cling to the ground, adding to the eerie atmosphere of the forgotten burial ground. Within the entrance hall of Ravenwood Manor, flickering candlelight casts long shadows upon the grand staircase. Tattered portraits line the walls, their subjects' eyes seeming to follow every move of those who dare to enter. In the dining room of Ravenwood Manor, a long table is set for an abandoned feast, its once luxurious settings now covered in dust and cobwebs. The chandelier above hangs low, its light obscured by the thick layer of neglect that pervades the room. Within the library of Ravenwood Manor, dusty shelves stretch as far as the eye can see, laden with forgotten tomes and ancient manuscripts. Moonlight filters through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns upon the worn carpet that bears the weight of centuries of knowledge. In the bedroom of Ravenwood Manor, the once grand canopy bed now sags under the weight of time, its tattered curtains billowing in the wind like ghosts of the past. Moonlight filters through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows upon the peeling wallpaper, as if the very walls themselves are haunted by the memories of those who once slept within. As dawn breaks, the front steps of Ravenwood Manor are bathed in the soft light of.
In a secluded forest lies a small clearing, bathed in the soft light of the setting sun. Four friends, Alex, Jess, Ryan, and Maya, set up camp for the night, their tents arranged in a circle around a crackling campfire. The woods around them are silent, save for the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. As night falls, a faint whisper drifts through the trees, barely audible over the crackling of the fire. The friends exchange uneasy glances, their senses on high alert. They dismiss it as the wind playing tricks on their ears and continue their conversation, but the whisper lingers in the back of their minds. As the night wears on, the friends notice that their supplies, flashlights, food, and water, begin to disappear one by one. They search frantically, their panic mounting with each missing item. Jess suggests that they may have misplaced them, but Alex's flashlight vanishes from his hand mid-sentence, leaving them in darkness. Suddenly, a pair of glowing eyes appear in the darkness just beyond the edge of the clearing. The friends freeze, their breath catching in their throats as they watch the eyes move closer, their glow growing brighter with each step. They realize too late that they are not alone in the woods. With adrenaline fueling their movements, the friends leap to their feet and flee into the woods, their hearts pounding with fear. Branches claw at their clothes and roots trip them up as they run blindly through the darkness. Behind them, the unseen presence gives chase, its footsteps echoing through the night. Exhausted and terrified, the friends stumble into a small clearing, their backs pressed against a towering rock formation. With nowhere left to run, they turn to face their pursuer, their hearts pounding in their chests. The glowing eyes emerge from the darkness, revealing a creature of nightmare, a spectral being with twisted features and malevolent intent. In the heart of a dense forest lies an old, decrepit house known to locals as the Hollow. A group of friends, led by Alex and Emily, stumble upon it while hiking. The house stands ominous and abandoned, its windows boarded up and its roof sagging. Intrigued, they decide to explore. Despite warnings from the locals, the group enters the Hollow. The air inside is stale and cold, dust dancing in the beam of their flashlights. The floorboards creak under their weight as they cautiously make their way through the dilapidated rooms, each step echoing in the silence. As they explore further, the group discovers old photographs and letters scattered throughout the house. The images depict a family long gone, their faces frozen in time. Emily feels a chill run down her spine as she senses a presence lingering in the shadows, watching their every move. As night falls, strange occurrences begin to unfold. Doors slam shut on their own, and disembodied whispers fill the air. The group huddles together, their fear mounting with each passing moment as they realize they're not alone in the Hollow. Suddenly, a ghostly figure materializes before them, a young girl, her ethereal form bathed in an eerie light. She reaches out to them, her voice a faint whisper as she pleads for help in finding peace. The group is frozen in terror, unable to comprehend the apparition before them. With the ghostly figure drawing closer, the group flees in a panic, racing through the darkened corridors of the Hollow. The air grows thick with fear as they navigate the labyrinthine halls, their only goal to escape the clutches of the restless spirits that haunt the house. As they burst through the front door, the group finds themselves outside the Hollow once more, their hearts still racing with the adrenaline of their escape. The house looms behind them, silent and foreboding, a silent witness to the horrors they've witnessed within. As they make their way back through the forest, the group vows never to speak of their harrowing experience in the Hollow again. They cling to each other, grateful to have survived the night, but knowing that the memories of what they encountered will stay with them forever. The abandoned Ravenswood Asylum stood on a hill, shrouded in fog and mystery. Jessica, a paranormal investigator, arrived at dusk, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. She parked her car and gazed at the looming building, its windows dark and empty like soulless eyes. Jessica pushed open the heavy front door, which groaned loudly. Inside, The asylum was dark and cold. She turned on her flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. The walls were lined with peeling paint and graffiti, and the floor was littered with debris. Her footsteps echoed eerily as she ventured deeper. As Jessica explored the main hallway, she felt a sudden chill. She turned to see a ghostly figure of a nurse standing at the end of the corridor. The nurse's face was pale and expressionless, and she slowly raised a finger to her lips as if to shush Jessica. Then she vanished into thin air. Jessica entered a room that appeared to have been a common area. Old, broken furniture was scattered around, and the walls were covered with faded, eerie drawings. As she examined the drawings, she heard faint whispers. She turned to see shadowy figures moving along the walls, their eyes glowing faintly. In the corner of the room, Jessica found an old journal. She opened it and read about the asylum's dark history, experiments on patients, mysterious deaths, and cover-ups. The journal mentioned a hidden basement where the worst atrocities occurred. Determined, Jessica set out to find it. Jessica found a hidden door behind a bookshelf, leading to a staircase that descended into darkness. She took a deep breath and started down the steps. The basement was cold and damp, with rusty equipment and old stained medical tools scattered around. The air was thick with the smell of decay. In the basement, Jessica saw the spirits of the patients. They were trapped, reliving their torment. A particularly sorrowful spirit, a young woman named Alice, revealed that the asylum's director had performed cruel experiments on them. The spirits begged Jessica to help them find peace. Jessica found a hidden chamber where the director's spirit lingered, still obsessed with his experiments. She confronted him, demanding he release the tortured souls. The director's spirit raged, but the power of the trapped souls combined with Jessica's determination forced him to vanish into the ether. With the director's spirit gone, the asylum began to crumble. Jessica hurried out, watching from a safe distance as the building collapsed. The spirits were finally free, and a sense of peace settled over the area. As the sun rose, the fog lifted, revealing a bright new day.
On a chilly autumn evening, four friends, Emily, Jack, Olivia, and Michael, gather around a campfire near Willow Creek. They share ghost stories and dare each other to spend the night at the old abandoned house on the hill. Despite their fear, curiosity wins and they decide to go. The friends arrive at the old house, its silhouette looming against the night sky. The house is in disrepair, with broken windows and ivy creeping up the walls. Jack pushes open the rusty gate, and they walk up the overgrown path to the front door, which creaks loudly as they enter. Inside, the house is dark and cold. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling, and dust covers the furniture. They switch on their flashlights, revealing faded wallpaper and broken picture frames. As they step further inside, the front door slams shut behind them, making them jump. They enter the living room, where an old grand piano sits covered in dust. Emily notices a family portrait on the wall, the face is scratched out. Suddenly, the piano keys play a haunting tune on their own. The friends back away, their hearts pounding. They move to the kitchen where rusted appliances and broken dishes are scattered. The air is colder here. Olivia opens a cupboard and a pair of ghostly eyes stare back at her. She screams and the cupboard door slams shut on its own. The friends huddle together, terrified. They find a door leading to the basement. Michael suggests going down, but Emily hesitates. The others convince her, and they descend the creaky wooden stairs. The basement is pitch dark and damp. Their flashlights reveal old furniture and strange symbols on the walls. In the basement, they find an old table with a Ouija board. Suddenly, the planchette moves on its own, spelling out, "Leave now." A low growl echoes through the room, and they see a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. Panicked, they rush back up the stairs, tripping over each other in their haste. Desperate to leave, they race towards the front door. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and ghostly wails echoing through the halls. They struggle to open the front door, finally breaking it open and escaping into the night. The house falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse onto the grass, gasping for breath. The house looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the night's events. The night is cold, but they feel a sense of relief and safety as they walk away. Back at their homes, they try to return to normal life. But each night, they are haunted by nightmares of the glowing red eyes and the whispers in the dark. The memory of that night stays with them, a constant reminder of the terror they faced.
On a dark, windy night, four friends, Tom, Alice, Sam, and Lucy, stood at the entrance of an old abandoned mansion on Hollow Hill. They were dared to spend the night inside the house, which was rumored to be haunted. They pushed open the heavy front door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the house was dark and filled with dust. Old furniture was covered in white sheets, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. They entered the living room, where an old dusty couch sat under a large broken window. A grand piano stood in the corner, its keys covered in dust. Suddenly, the piano played a single eerie note, making them jump. They decided to explore upstairs. The wooden stairs creaked with each step. At the top, they found a long hallway with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver as they heard a faint whispering sound. They opened one of the doors and found a room with old children's toys scattered on the floor. The air was freezing, and the rocking chair in the corner started to move on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing around them. Panicked, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was colder and darker, with a damp smell. They found strange symbols on the walls. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. She looked at them with hollow eyes and whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Hollow Hill. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed to never speak of it again.
In the dead of night, a group of friends, Sarah, Mark, and Emily, arrive at the imposing Ravenswood Manor, a sprawling mansion nestled deep within the forest. The moon casts an eerie glow over the overgrown grounds as they approach the decrepit mansion, drawn by tales of its haunted past. As they step through the creaking front door, the group is enveloped by darkness. The air is thick with dust, and the floorboards groan beneath their feet. Sarah lights a lantern, casting flickering shadows on the walls as they explore the abandoned foyer. As they venture further into the mansion, they are greeted by the sound of whispers echoing through the hallways. The walls seem to close in around them, and Sarah's lantern flickers ominously. They exchange nervous glances, but press on, determined to uncover the secrets of Ravenswood Manor. In the heart of the mansion, they discover a forgotten library, its shelves lined with dusty tomes and ancient manuscripts. Emily's heart races as she picks up a weathered book, its pages filled with cryptic symbols and arcane rituals. Suddenly, a cold breeze fills the room, and the books on the shelves begin to sway as if moved by unseen hands. As they explore further, they come across a portrait hanging on the wall, a grim-faced man with piercing eyes that seem to follow their every move. Mark shudders as he gazes into the man's cold, lifeless eyes, and Sarah quickly averts her gaze, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. As night falls, the mansion comes alive with ghostly apparitions and otherworldly sounds. Emily's heart races as she catches a glimpse of a figure moving in the shadows, its form shifting and indistinct. She cries out in fear, and the others rush to her side, their lanterns casting shaky light on the empty hallway. As the night wears on, the group's sanity begins to fray. They are plagued by visions and nightmares, their minds filled with images of death and despair. Sarah clutches her head in agony as she hears voices whispering in the darkness, urging her to embrace the madness that lurks within Ravenswood Manor. In a desperate bid to escape the madness that grips them, the group confronts the malevolent force that haunts Ravenswood Manor. With trembling hands, they perform a ritual to banish the darkness, their voices raised in a desperate plea for salvation. And as the first light of dawn breaks through the windows, the mansion shudders and groans, the darkness receding into the shadows from whence it came.
Evelyn and her friends, Mark, Lisa, and John, stood at the edge of the dense forest, staring at the looming structure of Blackwood Mansion. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out and grab at their feet. The mansion, abandoned for decades, had an eerie aura that made them shiver despite the warm summer evening. I can't believe we are actually doing this, Lisa muttered, her voice trembling. It's just for one night, Mark reassured her, though he didn't sound convinced. We spend the night, prove the ghost stories wrong, and then leave. John, the skeptic of the group, laughed. Ghosts aren't real. You'll see. Evelyn, the leader of the group, took a deep breath and stepped forward, pushing open the creaking iron gate. Let's go. Inside the mansion, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. The wooden floorboards creaked under their feet as they explored the dimly lit corridors. Each room they entered seemed more decayed than the last, with peeling wallpaper and broken furniture strewn about. Look at this, John called from one of the rooms. He held up an old photograph of a family, their faces blurred with age. This must be the original owners. Evelyn shivered. There's something unsettling about this place. Mark found an old journal on a dusty bookshelf. Maybe this will tell us more about what happened here. As the night wore on, strange things began to happen. Lights flickered even though the mansion had no electricity. The sound of footsteps echoed through the halls, though no one was there. Whispers seemed to come from the walls themselves. Lisa clung to Mark. Did you hear that? It's just the wind, John said, though his voice was unsteady. Evelyn held the journal tightly, her eyes scanning the pages. There's something here. Something about a curse. A loud crash echoed from the hallway, and they all jumped. Mark grabbed a flashlight and led the way, finding a broken mirror on the floor, though no one had touched it. Evelyn's hands trembled as she turned the pages of the journal. It says here that the family who lived here dabbled in dark magic. They summoned something they couldn't control. Mark's eyes widened. What did they summon? A spirit of vengeance, Evelyn whispered. It's trapped here, and it feeds on fear. John scoffed, but his face was pale. This is ridiculous. There are no such things as spirits. Lisa pointed to the mirror. Then how do you explain that? Before John could answer, the temperature in the room dropped suddenly. Their breath fogged in the air, and a low growl resonated from the shadows. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, its eyes glowing red. The friends backed away, their fear palpable. The figure seemed to grow stronger, feeding on their terror. Stay together! Evelyn shouted, her voice breaking. John tried to act brave, stepping forward. Leave us alone. The spirit lashed out, sending John crashing into a wall. Lisa screamed, and Mark pulled her back, trying to protect her. Evelyn held up the journal like a shield. There's a way to banish it. We just have to find it. Evelyn frantically flipped through the journal, looking for the banishment ritual. We need to find the symbols and say the words. Mark and Lisa barricaded the door, trying to buy them time. The spirit pounded against it, its growls growing louder. Found it! Evelyn cried, showing the page to the others. Let's do this, Mark said, determination in his eyes. They quickly gathered the materials described in the journal, creating a circle of protection. Evelyn began to chant the words, her voice steady despite the fear. The spirit broke through the door just as Evelyn finished the chant. It roared in fury, but the circle of protection glowed, holding it at bay. Keep chanting! Evelyn yelled, her voice filled with authority. The spirit thrashed against the barrier, but it couldn't break through. Slowly, it began to weaken, its form dissolving into the air. With one final, deafening scream, the spirit vanished. The mansion fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. We did it, Mark said, his voice filled with relief. The friends stumbled out of the mansion, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. They were exhausted, but relieved to be alive. Let's never do that again, Lisa said, managing a weak smile. Evelyn held up the journal, now closed. We should make sure no one else ever tries. John nodded. Agreed. This place should stay forgotten. They walked away, the mansion behind them now just a shadow against the rising sun. In the heart of a dense forest, where sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy, stood a remote cabin. Surrounded by towering trees and shrouded in an eerie mist, it seemed to beckon to those brave enough to venture near. Among the dense foliage, the cabin stood silent, its presence ominous and foreboding. A group of friends, consisting of Sarah, David, Lisa, and Mark, arrived at the cabin for a weekend getaway. Excitement mingled with apprehension as they approached the rustic abode. Sarah led the group, her adventurous spirit overshadowing any doubts. David the skeptic couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Inside the cabin, the air was stale, and dust motes danced in the faint light filtering through the windows. The furniture was old and worn, casting ominous shadows in the dimness. Despite its rustic charm, an unsettling feeling settled over the group as they unpacked their belongings. As night fell, strange occurrences began to unfold. Unexplained noises echoed through the cabin, and objects seemed to move of their own accord. Sarah brushed off the incidents, attributing them to the cabin's age, but David's skepticism wavered, and Lisa and Mark grew increasingly anxious. As the night wore on, the atmosphere grew heavier, and an oppressive presence seemed to envelop the cabin. Shadows danced on the walls, and a chill settled in the air. David's skepticism turned to fear, and Sarah's bravado faltered as they realized they were not alone. Suddenly, apparitions materialized before them, ghostly figures with hollow eyes and outstretched arms. Sarah screamed, and David's voice trembled as they realized the true nature of the cabin's inhabitants. Lisa and Mark clung to each other, paralyzed with fear as the ghosts closed in. With adrenaline fueling their movements, the friends made a dash for the door, their hearts pounding in their chests. The ghosts pursued them with relentless determination, their ethereal forms gliding